This past week, guys, the Legacy Museum, honoring the lives of thousands upon thousands of Black people who were killed in lynchings across the United States. It opened up in Montgomery, Alabama.
We have not been acknowledged, my family, as victims of the lynching. And this is the first opportunity that we'll have that someone will actually acknowledge the terrorism that we faced.
It's the Deep South. My family's from the South. I grew up on the East Coast, not so much in the South, but I went to school, HBCUs in the South, and I can say that slavery and racism, although, it apparently, it's super apparent, the aftermath of it is super apparent in the South. It's not something that's talked about. It's not something that's really acknowledged. It's something that, I believe white people in the South find shame in talking about it. And Black people, I feel as if, they still carry about that fear from having to live in, that much terror through generations and generations. So it's something that is not talked about on their side either. So this museum, the Legacy Museum, that is just a powerful, powerful visual display honoring the lives and just, displaying the terror that was really widespread across the United States, specifically in the South. This museum is groundbreaking, in my opinion. And it couldn't come in a better time, especially with all this Kanye West mess that's going on right now. And, his statements saying that, slavery didn't exist. I would say Kanye needs to take himself and his entire family, especially his biracial children, who probably are going to have major, problems identifying with Black people, especially being how they grew up. I think it's imperative that he take his family down there, or at least take himself there, and he can really kind of take in, what really happened here. And I want him to say it was a choice. All those young men, young women, who were hung, publicly hung. Yeah, it was a choice whether they wanted to scream and cry out or if they wanted to die with dignity. That was the only choice they had. And these were people who were being progressive. These were Black business owners who were competing with white business owners, but they didn't want, to have this competition. So instead, they made up lies about them harming white women, and then a public mob ensued, and people would be burned, hung, dismembered in a public forum, while children are looking on and eating hot dogs and candy apples, And this just goes to show, the terror that this country was based upon. And that's why we still see so much racism today. That's why we see police officers, terrorizing Black people. That's why we see these viral videos of people doing outrageous racially motivated things. And it's just because those things were never talked about. I feel I'm a strong believer in the only way people can heal is if they address the situation and they talk about it. Putting a Band-Aid over something and never having it properly heal, it's always going to be a scar, but it's always going to be an issue things are going to keep resurfacing. And I think what we're seeing now is the remnants of, things going unsaid, things being covered up. History didn't want us to know, and still does not want us to know, just how awful it was on all sides. Everyone's, no race, no person, no man is perfect. You know what I'm saying? But covering up the things that we've done in the past, they're not going to help us. They're not going to help us propel in our future. And neglecting to know what really happened, and neglecting to have that history and know those hard truths, what it's going to do is going to hinder you and handicap you, and you're not going to be prepared in the future when those things start to resurface. So now when this blatant racism is resurfacing and stuff like that, we're not equipped to handle it, because we have not given enough attention to our history. This is my personal opinion. I don't feel like racial history in this country has even been talked about adequately, especially in the public school systems. It's a few courses of African American history that you guys fluff up in a few, history chapters in a book, and then you keep it moving and you give people diplomas and say, hey, you're ready for the world. And honestly, that's just not how it is. Racial tensions go deep, and some people are just ignorant of it. And so they say stupid things like, 400 years of slavery sounds like a choice, because you're uneducated, because you chose to close your eyes to things that were too painful to open them up to. And this is what we're left with, ignorance about something. So yeah, I just don't think this museum was talked about in the media enough, of course, because it's not celebrity gossip and it's not outrageous, so people aren't really embracing it. But in Montgomery, Alabama, when it opened up this past week, it was, large crowds of people, black and white, and they waited in the rain for hours and hours to gain entrance. This museum, it memorializes about 4,400 victims of, racially motivated lynchings across the United States. Okay, and it's from a period of about 70 years, I believe, is what they're saying. But what has to be noted here, I think they did a beautiful, from the pictures and what I've seen, I would love to make a trip to Alabama just to actually see this museum. But from the pictures of the things that I have seen, people posting on Instagram, you can look up the hashtag, you can kind of see that they put a lot of time and they put a lot of thought into this memorial. I do really, really appreciate how they have the life-sized monuments hanging above, which really, really gets you in that place of, that could be a body hanging. If this was 100 years ago, if this was 50 years ago, this would be a body hanging above me right now, so it really humanizes what's going on. And I think that's, something that has not been broadcast enough. And I could say growing up, I've been to the Holocaust Museum in 8th grade and 9th grade. I remember going to the Holocaust Museum, and you walk into the chamber, and this is in Washington, D.C., and you walk into the chamber and you kind of get that sense, and people burst into tears because they really feel the terror that was put upon people in that time. But I don't think that we have had any type of museum to adequately kind of put a person in what it felt like and what it still feels like to be black in the United States of America. Okay, and I think because of that, white people have been able to, and not just white people, but just people who don't understand or fully grasp, you know, how deep this goes, it's like it puts a separation and it makes it seem a little too mythical and fairy tale-ish. So it's hard for people, especially people who want to stray away from slaves and stray away from learning about slavery and learning about the Middle Passage and learning about African ancestry. A lot of people don't want to be connected to that anymore, and that is Black people included. And that's just because, to me, I think we're just afraid. I think we're afraid to really dig deep into our past, into our history. We're afraid to kind of connect with that African ancestry that we don't know anything about for majority of us. And that's why there's such a widening gap in between, you know, Africans who are native and African Americans who, you know, have no real connections to the country, the continent of Africa, where there's multiple countries. So half of us, yes, I'm African American, but I have no clue, you know, what country within Africa, what hemisphere, what side of Africa my family is on. I don't know that. That history has been taken away from me. And I think that we just have to get in touch with that history. You know, that's a whole nother video, and I think I will start getting into more African, you know, American based history videos, just because I think that's something that, you know, we're so concerned with celebrity gossip, and we're so concerned with, you know, what Black celebrities are doing. But, you know, Kanye West, his blatant disrespect for our ancestry is just telling me that people out here are truly ignorant, and people just truly don't even know what went down. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, if we did know that, there's no way we would ever disrespect our ancestors like this. There's no way. That's why you'll never hear, I think my boy Carcino, you know, check out his page if you guys haven't already. He speaks the truth. But I think he mentioned that, like, you would never hear a Jewish person taking a public platform in the way that Kanye West did and saying the Holocaust was a choice. They would never do that, because they are taught from birth what their people went through. They're taught about the Jewish culture. They are connected to that, and they have a deep level of respect for that. And that's why most Jewish people like to marry within their families, and they hang out within their communities. Jewish people have very strong communities, you know, and they would never disrespect their ancestors like that to say the Holocaust, an extreme act of terrorism, was a choice. So it just goes to show how disconnected we are as a people. We just totally disconnected. We don't have that sense of community. And because of that, you know, this history keeps just repeating itself. It just seems like us as Black people, we can never fully come together, you know, and that's unfortunate. But yeah, if you guys are in Montgomery, Alabama area, I would suggest you check out this museum. I'm hoping to take a little, you know, road trip this summer and be in the South for about 2 weeks and eat some good food and visit my family. And, you know, hopefully I can mosey on down to Alabama and see this museum, maybe. And then I'm getting the hell out, because I like the South, but I would never want to live there. I don't want to stay there too long. I think it's apparent, you know, the aftermath of what happened there. I think it's still very much segregated, and it's kind of normalized. So I'm not really into it anymore, but that's our history, and you have to know, you know, where you're from if you're trying to figure out where you want to be and where you're supposed to be going. All right. So thank y'all for tuning in to Black Coffee, Black Tea. I'll see you next time. Bye.